Hey, this is Fix Reef, and today we have a brand new and exciting repair. To consider, this unit is actually my own and not a customer unit that I have. Some of you may recognize this. This is a Reef Mat, in my case a 500 model that I've had on my tank for a couple of years. I bought it less than 2 years ago, I think, on one of those Black Friday sales. And it worked beautifully for about a year and a half, maybe a year and 8 months. And then that started failing. Just randomly, it will switch off and give me a jammed mat error. And every time it does, I go and I do a reset, and sometimes it resets and works, and sometimes it doesn't. And it eventually got to the point where it does not reset at all. No matter what I do, it just does not work. So this is a drive unit for ReefMat, a Red Sea model. Um, and what it does is essentially fairly straightforward. It's got two gears here. Those gears are supposed to rotate and rotate the mat roller. Primarily, that's its primary job. It also has some type of brain inside that does the Wi-Fi communication to your phone. And over on this side, it's got two ports. One port is the power input, and one port is the sensor for to sense when the water level goes up, so that it needs to rotate the roller. These are nice ports. They have, connectors here that are sealed against water coming into it, which is good because this is supposed to sit very, very close to water splashes. And you can see mine is not particularly perfect. It's after 2 years, it's got some, salt creep going on, which I really need to clean up. And but nonetheless, it's from the outside, it looks like a fairly straightforward unit, and well made too. So my initial thought when I just started having problems with this is that it's probably sealed. Given how close it is to the water, we probably do not have access to the inside of it. It's probably sealed. It's not serviceable. But after looking at this closer, I realized that it might actually be quite serviceable. So today we are going to attempt a repair by taking it apart and examining the inside. I don't think I've ever seen anyone taking this apart yet, so it's going to be an interesting adventure. So let's jump into it. So first, to take it apart, we probably will need to look inside of this. These are little rubber boots that kind of hold the salt creep and some other debris out of the screw wells. So we're gonna take those out and see what's inside. Inside we have, you probably can't see it, but regular Phillips screws in four corners. So let's take those. It has been a long while since I've posted a repair video. Primarily, to be honest with you, because I've been extremely busy with all kinds of things, and didn't actually have time to record and process some videos. But I felt lately that I need to get back into creating some content for you guys, because I know that many of you have been asking whether or not I'm still doing this, and I have been very, very busy on many things. So nice, look like stainless steel screws, decent quality. After 2 years being so close in the sump to all the water splashes, they're not really in bad shape. Okay, so now that the screws are out, we can carefully open it up and see what's inside. Alright, so inside there is a board. Yay, board! We have a board level repair potentially today. We'll see what happens. So, what is of interest here? It's a single board. It's got a couple of power connectors obviously to it, and it looks like a motor connector. This looks like a that's interesting. So they have two gears over here. One gear is free spinning now that I removed the cover. The other one doesn't spin because it's connected to the motor inside, and it looks like a gearbox attached to the motor. So obviously one gear is controlled by the motor and runs off of the motor. The other gear is attached to this almost like a rheostat of some kind that probably tells the controller that the gear is spinning and therefore the rollers are running. And if the roller is not running for whatever reason, it's stuck or whatnot, it tells it that that it's jammed. All right. Anyway, what else is interesting here? So this looks like an expressive Wi-Fi board. I have seen this expressive Wi-Fi boards on so many reef gear that it's not even funny by this point. Expressive is a fairly cheap, if not very cheap, Wi-Fi board that is mostly designed for hobby use, to be honest with you. You can go and you can buy them very, very cheap from other board and other basic, hobby suppliers online. What else it's got? It's got, um, I'm not sure where's the main controller on it. Probably will have to take this board off to find out if, although there is something here, so I wouldn't be surprised if this is the main controller over here. Or maybe it's on the other side, we'll have to find out. But other than that, fairly basic components, LED lights that light up when it connects, power LEDs and stuff like that. A couple of connectors, looks like this one over here is for the motor, only 2 pins. This looks like a sensor connector with 4 pins. Oh, I was wrong. This was actually power. It's actually. Let me zoom it in because you probably can't see. So yeah, this is the power connector over here. This is the sensor connector, and this must be the motor connector. Alright. Alright, let's take a look at what we have. So this is a ReefMat 21A version 0.1. Let's remove it off of the screws and see what happens. What is apparent to me at this point is that the board is actually covered in protective coating of some kind. I'm not sure if it's the silicone coating like Kessil uses or something else. Looks fairly robust, kind of shiny. I'm not sure if you can see the shininess of it, but it's there. Which is of course great for a piece of equipment that's so close to the water. It's not the best for the repairs, because I have to remove all of this, and the number of Kessil lights I've repaired so far in the last couple of years is insane, and removing all of this silicone is really a pain, but it does protect against corrosion. Okay, so remove the board. 2021 Red Sea, it says over here, and it doesn't actually have anything more useful on this side. It's just the buttons that are on this, these 3 pieces of. And this is the controls for the motor going back and forth, and this is the configuration or reset or something like that, Wi-Fi. All right, so okay, so this must then be the main controller sitting right over here. Fairly basic. I'll need to see what it is, but it's fairly basic, and there is nothing else to it really. And then there is a circuit to power the motor, of course, and some LEDs. So there is not a whole lot of activity going on here. In any case, let's temporarily put it all back together and connect and try to test whether or not I'm going to be able to reproduce the issue that I'm having. All right, so back. All right, let's take it all back. So this is the motor. So it goes on here. The power and the sensor. What I'm going to do is I'm going to plug it into its own original power supply. I kind of hate it when the manufacturers never post specs of the power supply, so I'm going to have it right here. Hopefully you can see it. It's a 12 volt 1.5 amp basic power supply. So we're going to use it because it's got this fancy connector on the side. I don't want to plug in my bench power supply quite yet to this. I'm not ready for this. So I'm going to connect that. And for it to work, I also need to hook up the sensor. because if I don't hook up the sensor, it's going to immediately complain that the sensor is not working or the sensor isn't connected and wouldn't work. I have a lot of salt creep on the sensor cable. All right, so now we should be able to connect it now. I need to loosen some of this wire. All right, let's plug it in. And let's see what we have. All right. Sideways, of course. All right, so we have at least one LED on, which is good. Now the second LED, the first LED is just power. The second LED is Wi-Fi connected, so it's all good now. Now let's see if we can make it rotate one way or the other. I press buttons and nothing happens. Let me get rid of this. So I press buttons and absolutely nothing happens. And that's not good. Let's find out what kind of power we get, or not get, at the motor level. I'm getting 12 volts at the power. Now let's try the motor. Polarity is wrong, but it's convenient the way I connect it. When I press 12 volts, when I remove, shows like 1.4, 1.3 volts, settles down, I press again, 12 volts, and the motor is not spinning. Well, okay. So what that means is that the motor is likely bad. So we'll disconnect power. Disconnect. Well, I don't have to disconnect the sensor at this point, but I do want to disconnect the board out of it. Now, actually, let me get rid of the sensor as well. Now that we know that the power is being provided for the motor, but the motor is not spinning, it gives us a pretty good idea of what's happening. The motor is probably dead. What do you know? Again, about 2 years of operation, about a little less than 2 years of operation, and typical operation. It just works as it should, right? It runs for a little while, forward or rotates the mat, or pulls the mat, and then stops and just keeps going on and off. So not a whole lot of work, but nonetheless, it clearly was too much for this motor for under 2 years. Those of you who don't know, the unit comes with, I believe, a 1-year warranty. And of course, as with most appliances we get and the devices we get, the warranty, or the device dies right around after the warranty runs out on it. So now it's up to us to fix this. So this is the motor. The motor is fairly basic, right? Only 2 wires. It's a DC motor, clearly, 12 volt motor. So we'll need to figure out how to take the gearbox off. This big white piece here is the gearbox. I mean, it's entirely possible that the gearbox is seized as well, so we'll find out. A plastic bracket to hold it in place. Now it should come out fairly easily. Alright, so here is the gearbox. I don't know if you can hear this, but the gears are actually spinning quite fine inside, so the gearbox is good. The gearbox, let me see if I can zoom in a little bit. The gearbox is all plastic inside, which is not a bad idea, again, for a device that's consistently exposed to moisture. So, and again, it works, it appears to work just fine. Rotates in both ways. So it's all good. Now let's set the gearbox aside and let's look at the motor. The motor is spinning as well, so it's not seized, but clearly isn't working. I'm going to go ahead and figure out how to give it about 12 volts off of the bench power supply. This is a very rudimentary setup. I really need to have a connector that this goes into the power supply, but for now it'll do. So let's give it positive and negative, and power it up. And it's not spinning at all. It's not spinning off of the power supply, and it's not consuming any power on the power supply either. So it's not like it's shorted on the inside, but something on it failed. Very good. Well, at least now we know what the where the problem is. Now we just need to figure out how to solve it. All right. So for this repair, I have some spare motors. We're going to attempt to replace it with this. It's a little bit longer shaft over here. It's a few millimeters longer, but I don't think it's going to be that much of a problem because there is room inside of the gearbox. Worst case, I can always cut it off a little bit. So first off, we need to carefully remove this. Let me see if I can do this without damaging anything. No, not a good idea. This one's better. Yeah, just like that. Came out. That's good news. Now let's see if this fits onto the shaft. The shaft is supposed to be the same diameter, and it does. Perfect. Again, a little bit too long. Let me find out if this fits into the gearbox, because if not, I'll have to cut it slightly. And let's see if the bracket is going to close. Looks like it's going to be a fit. Yeah, it's definitely going to be a fit. All right. So the next thing now that we have the pin on, we'll need to replace the wires. You can see that over on the original motor there is, and as true on most motors, is there is a red dot that indicates the positive, and there is nothing on the other side. That's where the negative goes. So all we have to do is carefully remove. They're already kind of removed. The red wire needs to be stripped. That's better. Maybe not this long, but alright. Red wire to the red dot. We don't really have a choice, because in DC motors, of course, if you reverse the polarity, they will spin the wrong direction. We don't want that. So let's put some solder on it. And that looks good too. And it looks just like the original. You can't tell the difference. Looks really, really good. Alright, let's put it back into the gearbox and see if it will actually work. Before we assemble the unit, of course. And this fits really good. The size is right. Everything's good. Now let's find out if it actually works. I'm expecting that if I apply voltage, I will see the gearbox churning, and that's good enough of an indication that that this all works. And of course, you couldn't see some of it because I zoomed in too much. All right. So let's get 12 volts to it. Look at this. It's clearly churning. And it seems to be working. Very cool. Alright. So now that we've replaced the motor, here's my original one laying around here. So we're going to put it back on together. So the gearbox goes back in. Notice how two screws over here and over here have the metal threads, right? So those are machine screws. This one is actually plastic. They decided not to put the metal one in here. So for the plastic, we'll have to use an entirely different screw. It's different length, but also different type. Machine screw versus a sort of a wooden screw or a plastic screw. But anyway, let's assemble. Goes in very nicely. Long screws go all the way through the gearbox, and the short screw goes through the side. So I guess no board level repair today. I was expecting some type of an issue with the board where the motor controller dies or something similar, but wasn't the case at all. The board is in a fairly good shape. Okay, so the motor gets connected back to the motor connector. The power is over to the power connector. And the sensor. I probably was, you know what, make it easy. Let's put the board back on the cover first. Less than 2 years, and the motor is dead. These motors right here, these motors are common for RC models, those who build RC cars and are in that type of hobby. They do it all the time, and they know what they are. They are basic hobby motors as well. So I'm not particularly impressed. Well, I'm sort of impressed with the way how they made the board that's so nicely sealed and protected from the elements, and after 2 years being nearly in the sump, on the inside it doesn't actually have any damage. I was expecting something in there, but there's nothing. But I am absolutely not impressed with the motor that they installed in this. So hopefully the replacement is going to last me another couple of years. Maybe at some point I'll do some more research and see if I can find a beefier, higher quality motor for this, but I'm not holding my breath yet. Okay, so this is the motor connector, just making sure that I don't mix the motor connector with the power connector. That's another thing that they could have done different. Have the motor connector different from the type anyway, different from the power, so that it doesn't all look the same. Alright, now this goes back in. Hopefully we'll be able to match the gear. There you go. And let's put the screws back. And let's not forget to put the covers for each of them back in there. I don't want any of that salt creep inside more than it has to be. Okay, fully assembled. The very last test. Now I'm going to connect the sensor back on. For all of my repairs, every single repair that I get in, and I get a lot of them, I always do the final test. After assembly, everything is completely fully assembled and ready to go, ready to be shipped back to my customer. I always plug it in first and make sure that it works, so that I avoid the situations where I ship the product and it arrives at the customer's doorstep and they plug it in and it does not work for them. Alright, so it's fully connected. Let's wait and see what happens. So The power is on, Wi-Fi is on, so should be all good. Let's see if this works. And look at this. It works in both directions. Beautiful. I believe this repair is complete. So in this repair, we've worked on ReefMat drive unit, a 500 model. I'm guessing that the 1200 model is about the same unit. I'm guessing it's the same controller for both of them. That apparently had a bad motor in it, which caused a roller jam error to show up, or roller jammed error to show up. We've replaced the motor, and it looks like the unit is back in operation. Well, this was Fix Reef. Thank you guys for watching, and we'll see you next time.